Before the arrival of World Cup winner Lionel Messi, Inter Miami were on an 11-game winless streak, struggling to create chances and generally looking out of sync on a lot of their plays. But just 2 months later, and Inter Miami are the League's Cup winners, looking like a completely different team and creating chances from all over the pitch. But this success isn't just down to Messi, and their new head coach Gerardo Martino has given the team some much needed structure. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Football Meta. As a reminder, all stats in this video are brought to you by Soccerman's brand new X-Value platform, with in-depth metrics from 17 different leagues, including the MLS. Use code FootballMeta at checkout for 25% off yearly subscriptions. By starting a free trial, you also get access to the Football Analytics Handbook, a free PDF with some more insight into the advanced metrics that are changing the way we look at football. Click the link in the description down below to get started. Inter Miami's very active transfer window saw them bring in the old Barcelona trio of Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, and of course Lionel Messi. But they weren't just active in recruiting players, they also appointed ex-Barcelona manager Gerardo Martino, known for his more aggressive and vertical style of football compared to his predecessor Phil Neville. Obviously, swapping 1/3 of your team for proven world-class players is going to have an impact. But to understand how Martino is getting the most out of every player, we first need to understand what the main issues were. Before the change in personnel, Inter Miami's stats were weird. By comparing their stats with averages across the MLS, we can see how both their attack and their defense were well below league averages. But there's two elements on which they were highly reliant. Firstly, long balls, with the goalkeeper going long approximately 57% of the time. And secondly, their average possession of 54% is in the top 5 across the MLS, showing how they like to hold on to the ball for long periods of the match. Also reflected in the total amount of passes per game, again being in the top 5 for the league. So how can a team that is so reliant on long balls also look to hold on to it for the majority of the match? Well, it all comes down to how they wanted to create their chances. Whilst they rank extremely low for chances created from cutbacks and crosses, they rank first for chances created from through balls. This highlights their struggles in attacking the final third, often getting trapped in midfield, with the only option being balls in behind. In fact, only 25% of their possession was in the final third, ranking last out of all the teams in the MLS, showing how while they complete a lot of passes, these are often in very unthreatening positions. This pass network and heat map from their 3-1 defeat to New England shows us this squished positioning on the back line, with no one capable of pushing further up. And by comparing it to the opposition, it's clear how there was much less structure in the team, with big gaps in the centre of the pitch. But other than their reliance on through balls to create chances, there were more issues within the team. Firstly, there was a lack of a clear system, with Phil Neville shifting formation constantly from a 4-2-3-1 to 3-4-3 to 3-5-2, with players constantly having to adapt their positioning and their role each match. Given their challenges in progressing the ball centrally, the vast majority of the time Inter Miami would look to build their attacks out wide, which is where the main crux of their issues would lie, as they would very often struggle to create a man advantage. During build-up, Inter Miami were always very cautious of committing players forward, which would often mean there was a big disconnect between midfield and the attack, with the team struggling to fill the space between the lines and create overloads. For example, in this clip here, Inter Miami switched play onto the opposite flank, but rather than the centre-back getting on the ball, the wing-back is the player to drop deep. This means that as they move up the pitch, there is no way for them to create an overload and a dispossessed. However, if the centre-back was the player to push up, then this would allow the wing-back to gain a more advantaged position. And suddenly the situation becomes a 4v3, with many more options open for moving the ball forward. Next up, this clip can help explain their positioning issues and why it's much harder to progress the ball. As the ball moves out wide into the wing-back, first things first, his positioning is too narrow. In order to create gaps, you need to stretch the defense as much as possible. If, for example, he receives the ball on the touchline, then this pass forward makes much more sense, as there is a better angle to make the pass. Nonetheless, the space for the pass is not available, and so this run is not necessary. And now you end up with two players in the same position, with very little support around them, with the centre-back being too far back, and the holding mid not being in an active and playable position, forcing Inter Miami to restart their attack. By drawing a quick comparison with a recent Man City game, one of the best positionist teams in the world, we can see these slight positional changes. The winger is on the ball in a much wider position. Foden isn't rushing to make a run out wide and is in support, and the whole back line is in the opposition's third. by comparing it to Inter Miami, and they still have 2 defenders in their own half. Now, the issue out wide was not only down to unadventurous centre-backs, but also down to some mistimed rotations and movements into the wrong areas. Here's one example with Pizarro, a player that had a similar free role to what we are seeing with Messi, however with quite an obvious technical disparity. In this clip, after helping with build-up, he decides to rotate centrally. However, by doing this, all he does is block a passing route into the striker, drawing in the pressure and closing off the centre. As the ball moves out wide, the wingback has no support around him, and there's no option other than restarting their attack, as Pizarro is late on the rotation out wide. By going back, if rather than closing off the centre he took up a position blocking the fullback, then this pass out wide would be much more dangerous, because rather than being here, he would now be in this space, meaning if the fullback steps out, there's an easy pass forward, while if the midfielder is the one to step out, then it frees up central space for the midfielder to move into. Essentially, the main issue was this space here, and their difficulty in finding players between the lines. So what principles has Martino instilled into Inter Miami, and how have Busquets, Alba and Messi helped fix their issues? First things first, the system. Martino has settled on either a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2, with a consistent starting 11 and very few positional changes. Regardless of the system, there are some very clear ideas in what positions the players need to occupy. Firstly, the wingers are narrow. For example, in the final against Nashville, the system used was the 4-3-3, with Taylor and Messi playing mostly in these spaces between the lines. This would free up the flanks for the fullbacks to push up and stretch the defence as much as possible, creating a front 5, also allowing them to exploit Jordi Alba in a more dangerous position. In the semi-final against Philadelphia, the system was the 4-4-2, but with the wingers tucking inside, it again freed up space on the flanks for the fullbacks, with Messi acting as the extra player and having the liberty to rotate and create overloads. This meant that during build-up, they were much more reliant on moving the ball centrally, thanks to Busquets and the centre-backs forming this triangle at the base, with Busquets often moving back and creating a back 3, whilst also having much more central support with this box in the centre of the pitch. Here's a quick example of the structure. The back 3 formed of the 2 centre-backs and Busquets, the midfield square with the wingers and the 2 box-to-box midfielders, and the fullbacks giving the width out wide. This structure allows the team to have players between attack and midfield, and between midfield and defence. Consequently, the team as a whole have been playing a lot less long balls, and are much more reliant on progressing the ball through the lines. Now, let's also touch on the role of Messi. In this system, he is completely free to rotate, often dropping into the midfield and linking up with Busquets to help the team progress. He essentially acts as the extra man, and when dropping deep, his position will be taken up by the box-to-box midfielder, usually the young Argentinian Kremaski. We can get a good idea of the impact of Martino's changes by looking at this move here from the final. Messi in a much deeper position, creating a central overload. He finds space and picks out Jordi Alba out wide, with the winger being in a more central position. With these rotations, Inter Miami now instantly have a 4v4 on the back line, something they struggled to do under Phil Neville. The wingers acting in a more central position create a lot of little patterns and interactions that Inter Miami are able to exploit. For example, in this clip here, the coordinated movements out wide create this gap in behind. Furthermore, one of the issues we mentioned was that Inter Miami's wide centre-backs were often very cautious, not pushing up and creating overloads. However, now thanks to the cover provided by Busquets, the centre-backs are more adventurous, and often push up into midfield if not under pressure. One example is in this clip here with the centre-back pushing all the way up and creating links with the fullback and winger. The combination of better players and clear tactical principles have completely revolutionized Inter Miami, who will be looking to climb the table as much as possible with the few games remaining in the MLS. Finally, it's important not to underestimate the impact a player like Messi can have on a team, with reports suggesting the mood of the club is exponentially better, increasing the quality and intensity of the training sessions, while also helping the manager instill his philosophy. But I'm curious to know what you think. Is it really just down to Messi, or is there something bigger going on with Inter Miami? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out this video on relationism, and how it could quickly become the next big trend in football. As always, if you enjoyed this content, then please leave a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.